Yeah, we had a ton. We had 16 graduates, and I know there's a few graduates that didn't get signed up, but we are super proud of everybody and what they've done here, whether graduating high school or college and moving on to the next chapter of life. So today we are landing the plane on this sermon series that we've been in about leaving it in the water. For you guys that don't know, although I think most of you are aware, our building literally flooded 6 weeks ago. And so we've kind of been diving into that idea of what do we need to leave in the water? What do we need to leave behind us? And so we've been talking about doubt and courage and stepping out on faith. And last week we talked about this idea of going into the water literally and stepping into becoming a new person through baptism and all of these things. And so we've been talking about all these ideas, and so I want to land the plane today. And today is, for me, is a perfectly timed message, and hopefully maybe for some of you guys. And so I want to start by asking this question. Does anybody in here feel pressure in life right now? Right? Yeah. So the first service, there's more of them in first service, but they're liars. They don't ever respond. And I'm like, yes, okay. So maybe it's emotional pressure. Maybe it's financial pressure. Maybe it's relational pressure. Maybe it's pressure with time. We're coming out of a season where obviously me and my wife both work full time and have jobs that demanding a lot of our time. We also have our kids in 4 sports leagues, which is our fault. We're the idiots. And so we literally have, there are days where it's like, okay, who's taking them to this practice and what practice? There are days we have 2 practices on the same night in different parts of the city. And we just signed our son up for swim lessons. I'm like, what is wrong with us? Okay. But we have literally no margin of time in our life right now. And maybe you feel that pressure, or maybe it's the pressure at work, okay? Maybe it's the pressure of trying to meet the needs of other people. And this is timely for me, and I told first service same thing. I'll be honest, like right now where I'm at in my season with all of my family stuff, all of my work stuff, all of this stuff, and then the building on top of all of that. Like there is this pressure that we feel all the time. And every day we're up here trying to get things done and make things happen so we can get back to where we are. And there comes a lot of pressure with that. Now, some of that is internal pressure. Some of that is just pressure that we ourselves, let's be honest, put on and build within ourselves. But there is this pressure. And this isn't like a poor Jeremy type sermon. It's just the season of life that I am in. And I'm sure many of you guys can relate to that. Now, whenever you talk to somebody about the pressure that you feel in life, regardless of what category it is, and some of you, maybe you're in a good season, but you came out of a season where there's a lot of pressure, or you're about to go into a season where there's a lot of pressure, people will say what they think is helpful advice, and they'll say things like, well, diamonds are formed under pressure, right? That is not helpful to anybody ever, because you know what? Yes, diamonds are formed under pressure, but so are dumb decisions, doubt, depression, and despair, right? And see, pressure doesn't only create beauty. Sometimes pressure actually breaks us down. And so the first thing for some of us just to acknowledge, and this is hard for some people, is just to acknowledge that the pressure is real. Like that it is there and it exists and you're feeling it, whether it's something you've created within yourself or whether there is actually outside pressure you're feeling. It is something that some of us are experiencing and going through. And this is not a new phenomenon. This is not something new. In fact, 2,000 years ago, Paul, when he's writing his letter to the Corinthian church, he recognizes culturally the people that he's writing to are feeling a lot of pressure themselves. And so here's what he says. He says, "We are hard pressed on every side, but not crushed. Perplexed, but not in despair. Persecuted, but not abandoned. Struck down, but not destroyed." Now, what's interesting about this image that he's painting is he's acknowledging not only for himself, but for others what they're actually feeling. They feel hard-pressed. They feel perplexed. They feel persecuted, and they might feel struck down. And those are all feelings that not only existed for them, but maybe some of the feelings that some of us have and carry with us. But then Paul, on the other side of that, says, yeah, those things exist, but even though they're there, I'm not crushed. I'm not in despair. I don't feel struck down, and I don't feel abandoned. And so the question for us to wrestle with is what allows Paul to say that and to feel that so much so that not only when he says it and expresses it, that it becomes part of the scriptures that we read about God's message to us. See, here's what we know. For most of us, when we feel pressure, there's another P word that we wish we felt, and that is peace. We wish in those high pressure situations and relationships and moments that there was actually a sense of peace for us. So for example, when I want to find peace, in some ways, and I've talked about this before, for many of us, and if you're like me, it looks like going to the beach. I think I have a picture of one of our vacations to the beach that should pop up. Yeah, so that's like us at the beach. It's at night. People have started to kind of go back to the rooms and go out to eat. The beach is kind of a bit, just having this moment of seeing the ocean and the sunset and all of this stuff, like it's a picture of peace. Or maybe it's like we're a lake state, and so a lot of us go to the lake. It's where a lot of people are right now, at the lake on the weekends and riding around and being out there in nature. Or maybe it's like going to the mountains or going for a hike or whatever these things. And the reason we love places like this is because for a moment we get to escape the chaos. And that's the whole idea. We get to pretend for a moment that it doesn't exist. The problem is it's an illusion. It's only temporary. It's not lasting. Now, some of us, it's not a vacation. Some of us, we have to escape every day. And so the way we escape is we do things like we get on Netflix, right? And we just binge watch some show to escape. For some of us, it's social media, right? It's scrolling or flicking or whatever we're doing nowadays. And it's this thing of like we're just on these phones and these devices, and it allows us to escape. For some of us, it's actually things like overworking or staying busy, because the busier we stay, the less time it allows for us to actually deal with some of the stuff that's actually going on. And in those things, whether it's vacations or this mindless scrolling or numbing, watching TV or whatever, we feel like we have moments of peace in those things, but they're actually distractions. And it's actually counterfeit peace because it doesn't last and it cannot sustain you. For some of us, it's not just about this peace that we're looking for. So for some of us, when we think about the pressure, the things that we're carrying and weighing on us in life, it's this reality. I don't know if you guys know this. Guys are good at this. We stuff down what's hurting us. Anybody else? Like we have these things that are actually really real. They're real pressure. They're real situations in life, but we just stuff it down. We just want to pretend like it doesn't exist. Or maybe for some of us, we actually hide from it. We think that we could actually hide from some of the problems and things that we're facing. Or for some of us, it's the idea of we numb those things. We numb those things through different things that we can find to kind of numb it. And so what we do is we stuff down what's hurting us, we hide from what's chasing us, and we numb what's aching us. But none of those things actually truly bring peace. And here's what you have to know about this idea of letting go and realizing some of these things, is that Jesus never promised a life without pressure. In fact, we're going to look at a verse here in a minute that just kind of doubles down on that. He just never did. But he does offer to never leave us, forsake us, or abandon us, as we're going to see there's another invitation that Jesus gives as well. And so just to kind of let it all be out there at the beginning, here's the question some of you are going to have to deal with today. What do you actually need to release today? What do you actually need to let go of? What are the pressures in your life that you can't run from, you can't hide from, and the temporary peace that you think you found maybe isn't sustaining you? What do you actually have to do? What do you have to do to find some real peace, a resting place where you can find peace? The kind of peace that allows you to move forward, and the kind of peace that allows you to be like Paul and to look at these obstacles that he faced and that we faced, but realize those things in and of themselves are not big enough and strong enough to crush you because you found somewhere to go. So here's what Jesus says in John chapter 16. In this world, you will have trouble. Like, he's just pretty honest about it. Like, you're going to have problems. Listen, those high school graduates that just stood up here, and college graduates, God bless them, okay? Because they don't even know what's about to happen, right? Did you? Right? I didn't. And here's the thing, we can have these plans, we can have these ideas, and we hope everybody achieves and all of us reach our goals and dreams, but then life happens. And all of a sudden, these troubles that we never thought we'd experience, we would never sign up for, were not part of the plan, come into our life. And so Jesus says, in this world you will have trouble, But take heart, for I have overcome the world. It's not a suggestion, it's a reality that trouble is a part of life. But Jesus doesn't leave us there. And Jesus gives us this assurance to take heart. And I know that, and we're going to get to why he says that here in a minute, but it seems like this advice that we're looking at, we're like, but these problems are real. These things are real. And we can find temporary moments in life, whether it's vacations or mountains or beaches or silence or whatever, but they're not enough. They're momentary. I mean, what happens when you come back from the trip? Anybody else like me, that last night when you're on a vacation, like you dread it because you know tomorrow morning it's over? What happens when the silence ends and you have to step back into the chaos and all of these things and you have to start replying to emails and text messages and phone calls? There's this idea that comes that I think Paul had tapped into is why he can say what he said. It's this idea for some of us, we try to escape our problems. Okay? Or the other side of it is we try to white knuckle things and do them on our own, right? But there's another option. It's this word that maybe you've heard if you've grown up in church. It's the word abide. And abide is this idea is that you actually you don't just run from your problems or try to solve them all. You lean into something else. You sit. This idea of abiding literally means to dwell, to find a place that you go. And Jesus doesn't offer a place to go like a trip. It's actually a person that you trust. And so some of us, it's this idea of learning to abide and set in this space. For example, let me just go ahead and say this. For some of us in this room and in the first service, or maybe watching online, this is the first time all week you've sat down and just breathed. And maybe you don't even need to listen to anything else that I say. Maybe the holy moment for you in this next little bit is just sitting here and just having a moment to rest. So some of us, it's that. But for some of us, here's the other side of this piece of pressure that we feel, is we're also holding on to things that we were not meant to hold on to. We are carrying things that we were not meant to carry. And the reality is you can't escape your problems, but you also can't cling on to things that you were meant to surrender. Some of us are holding on to shame from mistakes we've already made in the past that God has already forgiven us for. Some of us are holding on to bitterness from someone who's moved on in their life. Some are holding on to fear about the future that hasn't even happened yet. Right? I mean, think about this. Let's break that down. For some of us, the pressure that we're feeling, the place that we find ourselves in, the reason we don't have peace in our life, and maybe the thing we need to let go of, is we're holding on to stuff from our past that God's already forgiven us for. And we've got to move forward. Or maybe for some of us, it's this bitterness, it's this unforgiveness, it's this thing that happens because someone did something to us. And I'm not saying it's not real. I'm not saying it's not legit. I'm not saying any of those things. But we're holding on to that. One of my favorite quotes, we've used it over and over again, is Anne Lamott. She talks about the thing is unforgiveness is like drinking rat poison and expecting the rat to die. And some of us, we're holding on to stuff that was caused by other people, yes. They've already moved on. And you're still stuck there. Or maybe it's for some of us, we're holding on to a fear about a future that hasn't even happened yet. It comes down to that control thing. Anybody a control person? I'm a control person. Let me just go ahead and tell you this. It is scary how little you have control over. None of us even know what's going to happen in the next 15 minutes. And yet we should plan and do all of these things and all that and get it and have dreams and all that stuff. But some of us maybe need to let go of some of that grip that we have on that. Here's what Jesus says. Abide in me. I've overcome the world. And so he's inviting us to sit, to dwell, to remain in these things. Peace doesn't come from control. It doesn't come from running. It comes from resting. It doesn't come from striving. It comes from staying. So for some of us, it's this reality of realizing that we need to find this source, this place that's not temporary, it's not momentary, but lasts. So James, the brother of Jesus, comes along, and there's this great message, take heart in me, I've overcome the world. And then James comes along and says this, and this is one of those verses that you're like, are you serious, dude? All right, so in James chapter 1, here's what it says. Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds. No? Can we say no to the Bible? I mean, how many, let's be honest, we've talked about this before. How many of us, when we face a trial, we're like, yes, another stressful day, right? Another problem, people are asking me questions I can't answer, right? Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, when you face trials of many kinds. Now, a couple of things. Not if, but when. When you face trials. Trials are inevitable. And not just one type of trial. There's emotional trials, spiritual trials, physical trials, relational trials. And he says, consider it joy. Now again, who in their right mind finds joy or is excited because they have to face another thing? And then James explains to us why he says this. And again, tapping into a little bit of what Paul was telling us earlier. Because the testing of your faith produces perseverance. Now again, not something any of us sign up for or want, but it's actually true. And here's how we know it's true. Have you ever gone through something hard and then you came out on the other side of it and you're like, oh, I can do that. And then what happens for some of us is we do that enough over and over again that we actually start to believe that whatever the next thing that we face, we actually might have the strength, not only in ourselves, but in our faith, to actually come through that as well. It's like this thing of testing your faith produces this perseverance. It produces this ability to keep going. Now, the word testing there is an interesting word. In the Greek, it's the same word that's used when they would refine precious metals. And so what they would do is they would get these metals and they have to make them or use them for different tools or weapons or whatever it is, or jewelry. But in order to do that, they have to refine it. They have to test it. And the way they do that is they have to get it really, really, really hot. And they put it in this thing, and this heat, it burns off all of the stuff that's not supposed to be there. It literally gets rid of, burns off everything that's not supposed to be there. And what remains is actually what's pure and what's real and authentic. And he paints this picture for us because he says, see, some of us are holding on to stuff that we were told about faith or told about God or told about life or things that we've maybe even made up about this. And then the trial comes, and because we believe these things that aren't actually true, then all of a sudden everything falls apart. But through this testing, we actually learn what actually our faith is really about. So for example, how about this one? Is your faith based around the idea that it's easy to trust God when things are easy? Here's the thing. When life is easy and nobody's sick and nobody's in the hospital and there's money in the bank account and our kids are actually seem to be getting along and we're getting along and we're not fighting and everybody's happy and healthy, it is so easy to follow Jesus. You're like, praise God, life is good. But then what happens when your circumstances change? What happens when you go into that season where you feel the stress and the pressure and the overwhelming stuff and the stuff that nobody would ever sign up for? It's funny, we've talked about this before, but what's fascinating is someone comes to me, and I'm not saying this because of what I do for a living, but if someone I love comes to me or one of you guys came to me and asked a question, I love you all too, that sounded really weird, but if somebody came to me and said, hey, I'm going through this. The advice I would give them is hey, God still loves you and you're going to grow through this and you're going to learn something through this. And maybe there's a reason, I don't want to say there's a reason it's happening. I don't always believe that, but maybe there's a reason that you can go through this and on the other side, you'll be able to look back and see this and have faith and hold on and be strong and, team Jesus. And that's what I would tell you. And then when it's me, I'm like, God, what's wrong with you? Right? Why are you don't love me? Anybody else? Just me? And that's what we do. But see, here's what the Bible, what James is saying is, listen, it's when you go through that, you actually learn what your faith's really about. C.S. Lewis has this idea that, like, sometimes you don't know what your faith actually is until it's all you got left to hold on to. Some of us are still holding on to shallow faith built on convenience, not conviction. And so James, he says, okay, so let's draw out, let's test these things. And he says this, let perseverance finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything. Listen, being mature, okay, there's no shortcut to that, just so you know, right? So for example, a good example of this is you got to go through things sometimes and come out on the other side to see who you really are, okay? A good example of this is, listen, these kids that graduated, you know, and they are, some of them are really, really smart, okay? But here's the thing. There's a world of difference between being smart and being wise. You can be smart. Wisdom comes with experience. Wisdom comes from going through things. Wisdom comes, you can't fake wisdom. There's no shortcut to it. And so sometimes we have to go through these things to see who we are so that we can be mature and complete, not like anything. And this is a big promise from James. It's a big promise. And this is not something that happens overnight. It takes time, and sometimes it takes the struggle. Sometimes we have to let go of some things because life doesn't go how we planned. And we go through this testing period where we tried to fix it, we tried to force it, we tried to flee from it. But maturity, but growing in your faith sometimes means you go through it, you recognize, you experience it, and you come out on the other side. For some of us, it's not just about this. For some of us, let me just be real specific about some things. For some of us, the pressure we feel or these things that we feel that are weighing us down that we need to let go and move on from, it looks more like this. It looks more like you need to forgive someone who never apologized. And maybe you need to forgive someone that you don't think deserves it. Because you're holding on to it and you're stuck there and you're the one not growing and moving forward. Or maybe it's laying down bitterness that's eating you alive. Or jealousy or envy. Maybe the thing you don't need to carry anymore is the offense of what, listen, we live in the most easily offensible period of human history, I think. Listen, we could offend everybody all day, every day. And sometimes those offenses, I'm not saying they're not real. I'm not saying they don't carry weight. I'm not saying that. But sometimes you're living in that space where that's all you are. Or maybe it's shame of your past, or we said, or it's the fear of the future, or the fear of the moment, or the fear that you don't. And listen, the invitation of Jesus, the invitation that Paul had tapped into that allowed him to say, yeah, all these things are going on, but I'm not succumbing to these things. It allows James to say, yeah, I go through these trials, but I actually kind of a little excited because I get to learn more about myself and grow in these moments. And so the invitation we're going to see is to let it go, lay it down, and to leave it. It's not helping you. There's this verse that Paul gives us that I love. He says this, therefore we do not lose heart. Though outwardly we are wasting away, inwardly we are being renewed day by day. I mean, isn't that a great picture? That Paul's acknowledging, like, yeah, it is chaos on the outside, and even physically, like I'm telling you, like I got this back pain, I don't understand, I'm getting older, and all these things. Like, it's not all great on the outside, but inwardly what Paul's acknowledging is because he's abiding in this place. He's staying in this place of peace with Jesus, that he's being renewed day by day. And wouldn't it be great to be in that place? So, a couple questions for you to answer. What is holding you back? What do you need to surrender? Many of us in our lives have been blessed to know people that have faced things that none of us would sign up for. It's like this gift that we've been given to see some of these people who go through these trials and go through these things that nobody would sign up for. The loss of loved ones and illnesses that are overwhelming, endured betrayal on great levels, financial loss, or walk through these seasons of life that are just overwhelming. And they come out on the other side, and just like Paul, like they're walking through it. And it's not always rainbows and sunshines, but they're going through it, and they have this strength and this peace that just doesn't make sense. They've learned to abide in something. The writer of Hebrews in Hebrews chapter 11 gives us this great chapter where it's all these stories of these people that endured. It's the stories that we've covered in this series. I mean, it's the stories of men and women that you would know their stories, even if this is your first time in church, because you've just heard them. And culturally and historically, these stories that have persevered and people tell. But in all of these stories, if you read these stories in completion, here's some fascinating things. Some of them never saw their reward. Listen, we celebrate these men and women of faith. They never saw this side of life what they had been promised. But they went through it. And they continued on. Many of them in these stories, they kept holding on and resting in God and trusting in God and all of these things. And it's not in all of these stories, but I'll tell you, for a lot of them, like there's this moment with like David where he's like, how long? You ever been there? Like, how long, God? Or maybe it's this moment, and none of them actually say this, but here's the overarching thing. It's them saying, and maybe you felt like saying this, I know I have, like, God, I believe that you're good, but in this moment, it's real tough. See, what I've learned in life is you don't always have to have the answers. And believe it or not, you don't have to be strong all the time. We're going to see that here in the end. That's not real. But in these stories that we see of men and women, in our stories, in these stories we see of faith, it's men and women who continue to persevere. It's men and women who continue to rest in the hope that they have in Jesus, and the hope that they have in God. That even in the middle of these storms and these trials and these pressures, they found a source. They found a peace that is not temporary or fleeting, but lasts. I love this quote from Brennan Manning. I see some of us, we want clarity. And that's why it's hard to step forward and to move forward and to let go and stop running. He says, craving clarity, we attempt to eliminate the risk of trusting God. Fear of the unknown path stretching ahead of us destroys childlike trust in the Father's active goodness and unrestricted love. So let's bring it all together to land the plane. We've talked about the pressures, the stresses, the anxieties, the worries, the things we're holding on to that we need to let go of. Talked about the things that we try to run from, the things that we try to fix, the things that we try to control. That's all of us, by the way. Welcome to being a human. And so we have all that. And then we've talked about this idea of persevering and persevering through these things. And we talked about finding a place of peace. And so here's the real invitation. What do you need to let go of so that God can move in your life? What is the thing you need to, this metaphorical idea of leaving it in the water? Is it anger? Is it resentment? Is it control? Is it fear of the future? Jesus, in this picture, he's talking to these men and these women who've been through a lot and overwhelming situations, just like many of ours. And there's this great invitation that he gives us in Matthew chapter 11. You've heard it before. He just says this, come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. And maybe for some of us, that's all you needed today. Was the invitation to stop trying to find your peace in these other places that are only temporary and fleeting, and to rest. I want to end on this last verse because this is for some of us, because I know it's for me. It's in 1 Corinthians chapter 12. And in this, Paul acknowledges something that I think is kind of the crux of a lot of what we're talking about today. We think we can do it on our own. Fix it on our own or run away enough to where it doesn't exist anymore. In 1 Corinthians chapter 12, here's what Paul says. But he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you. Now, the setup to this is that we find out that Paul has this thing, this thorn in his side, in his flesh. We don't ever know fully what it is, but he's got this thing that's bothering him. He's got this pressure, this anxiety, this worry, this fear, this thing that's just constant in his life. And he asked God to take it away from him. And here's God's response. My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Did you catch that? My power, so God speaking, is made perfect in weakness. This is like the most anti-cultural message for where we find ourselves today. You just got to get through it, be tough, you got to endure, you got to... And here's God saying this. So actually, the reality is when you try to do it all on your own and fix yourself and not lean into me and not abide in me, what you realize is you're missing out on the power you actually could be experiencing, the peace you could be experiencing. Therefore, I'll boast all the more gladly about my weaknesses. Well, anybody want to do that? So that Christ's power may rest on me. This is why, for Christ's sake, I delight in weaknesses and insults and hardships and persecutions and difficulties. For when I am weak, then I am strong. I trust you more than I trust myself. And so I'm going to let go of these things. I'm going to stop running from these things. I'm going to realize I can't do it on my own, and I'm going to rest. I'm going to abide. I'm going to dwell in you. So, at the beach, there's always this moment. I don't know if you guys do this or not. I do it. So every time I'll go to the beach, it's one of my favorite places. Towards the end of the trip, I will always go out at night by myself one time. Partly I have to go by myself because everybody in my family is afraid of the little crabs that come out at night. But I go out there by myself. And I don't know if you've ever done this. If you go out to the beach at night when all the lights are gone and the only thing behind you is like the hotels or condo lights, and you stand on the edge of the shore and you look out, and what do you see? You just see black. But you know the water's there, and it's like this intimidating like moment and picture. And I'll be honest with you, part of the reason I love it is going to sound weird to me. I just feel so small in that moment. I feel so small, but I look at this greatness and this vastness of the ocean. And there's like this piece of me that in that moment, I like picture this whole thing we've been talking about. Like, here's this vastness and this greatness of God. And here I am trying to think I can fix it all by myself. And it's like in the picture, I don't know if you remember the song, if you grew up in church, How Great Thou Art. Like, it's like that moment of like realizing how great and vast God is just by standing there in that moment. And what I do, and this is the true story, so don't tell anybody, every once in a while when I do that, I will literally say out loud just things I need to leave behind and let go. And I just take this moment in the darkness and seeing the vastness of this and the smallness of me, and I just let it go. Here's the challenge. I know we're not in Florida. I'm sorry there's no ocean behind me. Wish there was. But you don't have to leave today the same way you came in. You don't have to walk out carrying what you were meant to surrender. You don't have to keep holding on to fear, pride, hurt, control. You can actually, as weird as it sounds, learn to let it go, to lay it down, to find peace and abide somewhere else. This is how you move forward. This is how we grow. This is how we find peace that surpasses understanding. By trusting God, taking the next step, moving forward, not in your strength, but in His. So for some of you, as cliche and weird as it sounds, is you just need to let something go this morning. Let's pray. Father God, we love you and we thank you, God. We thank you for your goodness, your grace, God. And I pray in these next few moments that for some of us, we just need that moment of clarity, of you speaking to us, whether it's through the songs we sing, through the words that we've heard, or just in a moment of quiet. For some of us, God, it's that realization when I said it a few minutes ago, that for some of us, this is the first time we've had all week just to set and just breathe and to rest. And in these moments we're about to experience through worship and singing of songs and taking of communion and recognizing the goodness and greatness of your grace, God, maybe just in these next few moments, just allow for some of us just that actual, it doesn't have to be physical, it's just in our hearts and our minds and our souls. It's a breath of just breathing out, just letting go maybe some of the things we need to let go of, taking a new step in a new direction. And so, Father, I just pray that you give us those moments. And so, Father, we thank you and we love you. In your Son's name we pray. Amen.